Well, this is different. R.L. Stine, the world-renowned writer of the Goosebumps books. Man-Thing, world-renowned for being not Swamp Thing. I doubt anyone saw this book happening. I didn't even know this existed until I opened up my comic book bento for the month. Based on the foreword, Mr. Stine was a fan of the old EC comic stories, and when Marvel gave him a chance at writing Man-Thing, he decided to channel some of that. This isn't the first time Marvel's done something like this though. Other examples would be Phil CM Punk Brooks and George Romero, to name a couple. The graphic novel has 6 stories, but only the first one is about Man-Thing. It's also the longest one. The other 5 are adaptations of his Chamber of Chills series. Let's focus on the Man-Thing story though. The story begins with Man-Thing facing off against some weird centipede-like creature that's talking to him. What's even weirder is Man-Thing is talking back to him as well. The reason why this is odd to me is when scientist Ted Sallis took the experimental fluid that changed him into Man-Thing, he lost his sense of self as well as his ability to speak. I assume that this isn't some sort of alternate reality. If that's the case, that means after 40 plus years, Man-Thing has a personality now. Anyway, back to the story. We quickly learned that this isn't a real fight, but Man-Thing is filming a scene for a movie. After he regained his mind, he figured he might as well get a job, so Hollywood it is then. Of course. Things start to go downhill for him after he gets fired for looking and smelling disgusting. Well, he is a muck-encrusted mockery of man. Then we immediately see him recount his origin, and that leads to him fighting the previous mindless version of himself and a gator that looks like the gator from the Lake Placid movie. This all leads him to do some dimension hopping and fighting to save the Earth and reality itself. Like I said before, this is one of 6 stories. I'm not going to really go into them in length. The other stories aren't more than 5 pages in length, and if I were to discuss them or review them, there's a danger that I could spoil them, but let me just tell you the names of them though. Put a Ring on It, Drive the Horror Highway, Like a Horror Movie, The Neighborhood Watch, and The Perfect Boyfriend. One of the things I liked about this story was it was pretty funny. For the most part, I liked R.L. Stine's dialogue in the book. The situation we initially find Man-Thing in is completely unexpected. It was nice to see how this character would do in a completely different surrounding that's not swamp. With the way the story ended, I can see a sequel happening and just imagine how much more the story would get more and more bonkers. The way the story hooks you at the start was also good as well. Mr. Stine just throws you into the story, and that's a good thing. Because of that, I was really intrigued at the start. And also it's a good thing that Mr. Stine didn't start off retelling Man-Thing's origin. He does retell it a little bit later, I believe in the 2nd issue, but if he were to do it at the beginning, it would be too cliche, and we've gone through the whole retelling the origin at the beginning in comics trope. The art and color was pretty good. It got really imaginative once the dimension hopping started. I like the design of the characters as well. Everyone looked a bit different, but you could tell that the artists had their own style to it. The shading was good at times, and that helped give the story a moody tone when it called for it. The mini stories at the end of the trade are a good indicator for the reader on whether or not they want to check out more of Mr. Stine's work. Each story gets to the heart of the plot in a hurry. With the exception of one, I'll focus on how terrible humanity can be to each other. That reminds me a bit of Rod Sterling. Also, it's interesting that he put that, or Marvel put these stories here. It's as if they're trying to advertise Mr. Stine's other books. I'm not sure how I feel about that, but the stories were pretty decent. As for negatives, by the end of the Man-Thing story, the writing reminded me a bit of writer Brian Michael Bendis, especially his early run on Guardians of the Galaxy. Everyone had snark and kept firing quips. This made things even worse because multiple characters would say the same quip over and over again. Because of this, the characters seemed to be speaking with the same voice. This made most of the characters come off as one-dimensional. Also, there were a good number of text boxes describing the action. Because this is Mr. Stine's more than likely first comic book, he didn't always let the art showcase the scene. An example would be showing Ted Sallis anxiously stabbing a needle in his arm. but then describe it in a text box. He didn't just let the art tell the scene. And because of that, the whole thing became redundant. Because of Man-Thing's lack of speech or intelligence in previous stories I've read of him, those stories are more about the people in the stories and how his presence affects them. So having him being able to think and speak should have helped the story, but since he sounded just like the other characters in the story, it just turned out to be very counterproductive. Art-wise, while most of the book is good looking and the inking was good, it did get a bit out of control at times. There were scenes where it came off as really muddled. It was getting to the point that it started reminding me of the Spider-Man / Red Sonja crossover from a few years ago. FYI, I did a review on that comic as well. Feel free to check it out down below. I have a link. Shameless plug. That being said, sure, I still recommend this. Despite the negatives, this was a fun read. I imagine part of the reason of the lack of variety in the characterization of the characters and repetition of the dialogue is because I believe this is R.L. Stine's first crack at writing comic books. It's possible that if he continues, he'll get even better. Comics and novels are two totally different mediums. The art for the most part was appealing. A different take was done on an existing character, and it made me interested in seeing where the story could go next. If you like this review, then please comment below, click like, and share. Also, I'm currently on a quest to get 1,000 subscribers by early next year. And until my next video, have a good day.